is Brian Howard. I'm a Calgary realtor who has sold an average of a house a week since moving to this great city in 2003. And this is Calgary Living. Thanks for tuning in. On today's podcast, I have Afshin Devani with me. Afshin has been a longtime owner of REMAX House of Real Estate and the owner with his brother of the Round Square team. So Round Square is a building company in Calgary with their theme tag is Fit Where You Live. I've had an engaging and interesting conversation with Afshin. I feel there's going to be a part 2 to this interview. I'm sure you're going to enjoy it as much as I enjoyed interviewing and getting to know Afshin a little bit better. Thanks for listening.
Started my real estate career probably 20 years ago. First REMAX purchase was REMAX Classic, and that was probably, I think, Michael always corrects me, but I think it was 17 years ago. So today I am the CEO of Round Square, and I do strategic business support at REMAX House with Michael King, and I'm a 50% owner, and I have been for 19 years. Interesting enough, I don't think probably 50%, maybe even 70% of the agents that we have at REMAX House don't even know who I am. And that's been by design sometimes, and sometimes that could be a flaw, and sometimes it's a great thing. So most of my time today, I would say, is spent with Round Square. As the CEO of Round Square, most of my daily routines is dealing with the team, mentoring, coaching, removing obstacles, and then the high-level stuff that I love doing is raising capital, strategic financing, and dealing with big relationships and trying to find more opportunities for the business.
Actually, let me ask, what most strikes you about living in Calgary?
You know, I've been here all my life, born and raised, and I think the biggest thing when I reflect on that question would be when my mother and father came to Calgary. They were the typical immigrant story, and they had $10 to their pocket when they came to Calgary and built a life for us, and their first priority was making sure we would be integrated into the Canadian society and learn how to live in Canada. Interesting enough, the little I do remember of my past, my mom and dad did not speak much English. My dad went to work for Super Rail, and my mom stayed at home looking after us. So I would think the biggest thing for me at Calgary was the opportunities that came about being and living in the city. However, mostly is how my mother and father were supported by the community we had in Calgary, which was, I can't even put words to it. It was unbelievable, because where I am today is because of my mother and father and my relationships with my family. However, the extended community in Calgary supported my mother and father to be able to support us in this changing economy of Calgary.
That's fascinating. So, and you mentioned that, so it was your mom and dad who came to Calgary. How did they happen to land in Calgary, and where did they come from?
So, interesting enough, my mother and father were in Africa, in Uganda. And at that time, when I think it was 1974 roughly, it's when Idi Amin was in power, and he was getting rid of all the Ismaili Muslims. And the Aga Khan made a deal with Dad Trudeau to bring all of us over to Montreal. And that's how my mom and dad got to Montreal, and from there they settled there. And my uncle was in Calgary and said, hey, come to Calgary. There's a company called CP Rail, and they're hiring. So my mom and dad picked up, flew over to Calgary, and got a job. My dad got a job with CP Rail, and that's how it started.
Afshin, what is it that you most love about Calgary?
I mean, through my journey of the 40 years, actually now I'm 42, that I've been here, it's the opportunities that were around us. And we came to Calgary at a time where it was growing, and it was a growing population. And it was very interesting, the opportunities that were around us in Calgary was really, there was jobs, oil was doing well back then, the economy was doing well, things were moving forward, and almost I felt that if you were a hard worker in this city and you were going out to take risks and find opportunities and build relationships, it was almost endless what you could have achieved in your life, personal and business life. And then seeing the city evolve as well at that time, I don't have too many memories of my past. However, I still remember the places I lived. Started in Dover is where I was born and raised, and then moved to Pembroke Meadows, and then we moved to Temple, and then we moved to Coral Springs, and then I jumped over to the Southwest. So being in all those communities, I really got to see how every community was, same, however, very different. And culturally, how different it was, and the population and the immigrants, and how people were really, they would, work together and live together and play together. And it was really interesting how it was very community focused. So when we were in Dover, it'd be like you would hang out at school and you'd have friends and family, and then, so on and so forth. And moving up in in my dad's wealth of whatever we did have, every time we moved to a bigger house and a better community, and then we built relationships there. And then the opportunities of that alone were really interesting. So it was nice to see how Calgary was evolving as we evolved as a family, and as I grew up and became, a toddler, a teenager, an adult. It was really interesting.
Actually, what is it that you don't like about Calgary?
Today, I would say how people have so many different opinions, and it seems hard for people to get on to a similar path, which is normal. I think it's human nature. But it's very difficult, like in the business I am today, trying to rezone a piece of land to bring in more density into an established community is sometimes a very big battle for us. And it's every individual has a reason why we shouldn't be, zone our Marta Loop property. For example, we take 3 homes and building it into a 6-story building. It was a fight. It took us 18 months to get the rezoning done. And some of the stuff we heard, it was upsetting. And we were only trying to do good for the community. And we get the negative comments about, too much traffic. My kids are going to be in danger. You guys are just here for profit and making money. You don't care about the community. You don't care about the vision. And sometimes it's very difficult to hear. However, we persevere and get through, and we were successful. That would be, if there was anything I didn't like about Calgary, that would be it. It's just, which, again, I want to clarify. It's not wrong to have a different opinion. However, we should be able to share our opinions without feeling hurt or having negative connotations based on the good we're trying to do.
Of course, I don't know all the nitty gritty of that, and I just see I see you and your company around Square doing interesting projects, and we meet in the hallway occasionally at REMAX House, and but I don't really see where you're running into that maybe the roadblocks and kind of the redevelopment and then more the density that you're building. So who is it that is saying who's why did it take 18 months? As you described the project, the one you talked on about 33rd, describe that project, and for example, you've done many different inner city projects. Why did it take 18 months to develop that?
Partly that strategy is what Round Square does with our engagement procedure. So we do postcards, we do open houses, we send out brochures, we let the community know that, hey, we're coming. We put signage out before when we purchased the lot, we put a sign out saying, hey, Round Square is coming to rezone this land. So we do have a pretty wholesome engagement process. Part of it is us. The other part is, I don't know the true answer to that. I would be putting words in people's mouths. However, people are not, and I think this is a bigger problem in the world, is people they're not used to change, and they don't like to see change. I would say that's the biggest factor we face when we're trying to change a 50-foot bungalow and 3 of them to a 6-story building. And people are so worried about change, and then they're worried about more people and more cars and so on and so forth, which you've probably heard because you're very active in those areas and you're always looking at those 50-foot lots. So I'm sure you've heard a lot about it as well. However, all the reading and education I've done lately, more reading on density. Density is a good thing. And one of the things I try to reiterate and communicate is more eyes on the road is actually safer. One of the books I read was Triumph of the City, and they actually they talked about the favelas. And they said the favelas are actually, for the community, is one of the safest neighborhoods. If you had to go do something, you can drop your baby next door and come back and know your baby was safe because of the density of the population there. So people would look after people. So one of the things in the books was more eyes on the street are a good thing, not a bad thing. But that's a very hard thing for people to believe because in Calgary and most of our rezones, it is always, more people is a bad thing. There's going to be more crime because there's more people. However, there is statistics to say that actually you have more people on the street. There's actually less crime.
But tell me about your interest in real estate. It seems like you've been doing real estate since your 20s or so. How did it happen that, how did you go down the real estate road? And what were some of your first real estate decisions?
Started my career in telecom. I worked for the big five companies. Not the big five, I guess it was the big three back then. It was TELUS and Bell. Really two, I guess, and then I was in sales, so I would sell big data connections to the oil and gas company when the internet was really moving forward, and data was very important to oil and gas companies and be able to transfer data from their downtown offices to their other locations or out to the field. So I was the one who would sell that data connection to get data across to the offices, and we did well. Business was growing, oil companies were growing, they needed more information, so they needed bigger data connections. We got paid well. I always knew that in our community, as in the Smiling Muslim, a lot of our community members were in real estate. And all the reading I do, most wealthy people have real estate in their portfolio. Everybody diversifies and they have some type of real estate portfolio. So I was like, I need to get into real estate. Never knew I would be this deep into real estate. I started with the purchase of a home in Ross Carrick. We renovated the home in 3 months and then we sold it and made a good profit. And I was like, well, this was awesome. So we wanted to continue down that path. Interesting enough, the realtor I was working with, he at that point said, hey, I have an opportunity to buy the office I'm at, the REMAX office. Would you guys be interested in buying the REMAX franchise? I said, absolutely. So we, again, being young in real estate, and that was our first transaction. We made some money. We did well. Five of us put money together and we bought the office. And I think back then we started at 69 agents. And we grew the business from there to where we are today. At that same point, probably a year into the purchase, Joel at that point was, hey, let's build some infills. Let's start a company. And my first building company was Nicholas Homes. And we built our first project in South Calgary. And, the partnership didn't go well. We had some conflict in the partnership. And we split up. So I kept the REMAX franchise. My ex-partner, kept the building company. And I went ahead and built a relationship and and then he became my partner at REMAX Classic back then. And then we purchased REMAX House. At that time, I really enjoyed building homes and I still wanted to be in the business. So I started my own company called Redefining Homes, building estate homes. And from there, we are here today. And now I'm deeply invested in real estate. And that's all I do today.
Wow. So it sounds like it went from, it was Nicholas Homes, and then it was Devaney Homes, and then was the next one kind of Beyond Homes? Yeah. And then it turned to Round Square, which I love the name. And that happened, I'm guessing, maybe 4 years ago?
Yeah, I think we're into our fourth year, so it's been 3 years now with Round Square.
So you are the CEO of Round Square, I think, and your brother Al is the president.
Correct.
Now I don't know. I know you a lot better than Al, and Afshin, I've known you for a long time, and I'd like to know you better, and we know each other somewhat. Afshin, Al seems way cooler than you. Is he cooler than you?
Yeah, absolutely. He's the cool guy in the family.
So he's so I just want to point that out to you and see if I can get Okay, fine. And so he works as president. So what does he do versus you? I guess he's maybe more involved with team members or leadership, or
He's more dealing with the external Round Square brand and the political part of being a developer, dealing with the big relationships on that side. So he's great at building relationships with the city, the community. He deals with all the strategic planning, development for Round Square. So the easiest way to say it is he's the public-facing guy out there, meeting people, shaking hands, doing all that, and I'm the guy behind the scenes and deal with the team and so on and so forth. And we're partners. And for the titles are the titles because we need a hierarchy within the company because we have a fairly large company now. We're at 33 people, so we need to manage it that way. So the titles were to make sure we run the company as a traditional corporation.
Mm-hmm. Good. And that works well? You find yourselves with very different roles, or because you're brothers and basically you both do all the same things?
No, it's actually really, I think the team, I couldn't do this without the team because there's some things I'm great at, but however, just equally there's things that I'm shitty at. And my brother is my backstop on the things that I'm not great at. And the rest of the team, they fill in the holes as well. So the team lets me focus on what I'm great at and let me focus on my unique abilities. And vice versa, I help my brother support him on his weaknesses so he could focus on his greatness. And I wouldn't do it any different.
Super. Afshin, how does the boom bust economy of Calgary? I mean, how about it? And how do you cope with it? Do you save for a rainy day? And how does it affect your mindset? And maybe I'd like you to sort of address in terms of the people around you, your own community, maybe your own family, and, maybe your staff members and team members who've, been affected by it, meaning they bought at a certain high point and maybe had to sell at a low point. Just talk to the audience a little bit about a boom bust economy and how you deal with it in your business in real estate.
Yeah, it's difficult to be in Calgary, and especially as we get larger, it becomes even, because some of the stuff we buy is such a long process to build and develop. However, what I've learned from mentors is, one of my mentors says, you only make money in an up or a down market. You never make money in a flat market, which is an interesting comment. And I've learned to really focus on that. So some of my purchases, I did get hit pretty hard in 2008 when I had Devaney Homes because we were building estate homes. And that market in Calgary, as we all know, gets hit very hard. And when I do estate homes, they were like the Elbow Valleys and the Aspens, and it was very difficult. And I got hit, however, with the support of my community and my investors and my family, I was able to get through the 2008 recession, which is so different than what is happening today. However, again, at the same time, there's so many great things that happen for us in a boom-bust economy. One of the greatest things is a lot of people want to exit. It's just like nobody learns from their past. So as soon as we go into a slow time or a recession, there's some people that can't manage that. So there's some really great opportunities at the bus cycle. So we can pick up land, we can find some partnerships, we can find some team members, so on and so forth. So there's lots of great things that happen in the bus cycle. And on the boom cycle, like everyone knows, everyone does really well because we can sell everything and we can do all the great things on a boom economy. However, the flip side of a boom economy, where it becomes difficult, is it's harder to find people. Trades are hard to keep, so on and so forth. So it's like yin and yang. You need to have the booms to be successful, of course. However, in our minds, and the way I look at it, is the bus is actually where I go and I can build a great team because there's some great people out there. And that's how I've been dealing with boom and bust. And I do speak about it all the time. That's one of the reasons we've grown to another, Round Square is shifting now, and we are going to be keeping most of our assets now and renting them out. And one of the things we've done and why we've done it, looking at the past and past developers and these bigger REITs, there's a reason these big REITs and developers keep all their assets. and rental assets because it's cash flowing. So no matter what, in a rental economy or rental building, in a boom or bust cycle, you're typically always static. It doesn't move much. I might have to reduce rent by $50 to $200, and maybe when the market picks up, I might be able to increase by $50 or $200. However, it's fairly stable, and you get that income every single month. No matter what, if it's a boom or a bust cycle, it's consistent, and it can be consistent for 10, 20, 50, 100 years. And again, looking at bigger developers that are larger than us, that have been in the business for 50 plus years, they have thousands of units as rental, and they don't do much of pre-sold or spec homes or spec units or selling units. And we looked at that model. We were like, how do we do that? And especially in Calgary, and especially with the economy changing, the new millennial fad of these people or that group is not buying a home is not a necessity anymore because they want to have flexibility. And there's some articles that say that's not true. The younger people want to buy a home. However, what we've noticed in our market in Calgary, that when it's slow, it gets slow, as you know, in real estate. And rental, again, right now, 33rd, interesting enough, the majority of the new buildings are rental.
Tell me what being of service meant in your household. Let's talk a little bit about being on service. As I was noticing your project in Marda Loop coming up, I thought that, you guys are being of service in the community.
I think so. I think being in service, in my mind, if I were to answer that for Marda Loop, it was really important for us to have that building accessible to the community. And what I mean by that is one of the things we did in that building is we have a courtyard in that building. However, the biggest difference of our courtyard compared to every courtyard in Calgary, it's accessible to the public. So we have a staircase off the front of the building and a staircase off the rear of the building open to public 24/7. So the idea for us was to have a place where we could give back and say, hey, community, we are building this larger building. Here's what we're doing. And this is why, because we want to give back. We want you to come to the building. We want you to sit on the step. We want you to use the businesses that are in this building to have a coffee or have a sandwich, bring your friends, bring your family, hang out, have a place to congregate and have relationships and be a community. So that was very, very important to us. And we even were very picky on the tenants that we had in that building. We know most buildings you need one anchor tenant, so we did get one anchor tenant. However, the rest of the businesses in that building are all community, people from the community, Calgary-based, and that have been here for 20 plus years. So that was very important to us. Yeah, that was my brother's, Al's, his baby there, and it was very interesting as well. It was super important to him for public arts. And more important is to use a artist that is, artists, it's tough for artists. It's very difficult for artists to get out there and do projects and do things. So it was really important for Al to say, hey, we're going to give up space on art. We're going to design some of these walls for mural. So he wanted to do that. He said, how do we do that? He came up with the idea with our marketing department to put a contest out and use local artists to be able to, and we're paying these people to put this on. So that was important too, to be able to say, hey, listen, we're not looking for it for free. However, to be chosen, you have to do some work up front, and we will give you 2 places to paint, and that's what we did. So that was super important. And again, that was the brainchild was my brother on that one, and it was successful, and it was super important to us.
What are your current interests in marketing?
Social media is great for branding. It gets our story out there. People are able to connect to us. So that's super important to us, and that will never go away. One of our main social media, as you've seen, is Instagram. I personally am not on social media. One of the things I think I'm just a little bit private, and maybe I need to be a little bit more social and be out there and be outgoing. However, it hasn't been 100% focus for me. My company, Round Square, we have 3 marketing people in Round Square and my brother as well, who are always on Instagram or posting something or making sure we can connect with the community through social media. So I think it is very important. I think it's the way to be, the way to do, and the way for people to see and be able to connect, because it's such an easy way to post a picture, post a comment, post a tweet, and the world gets to see it. And I think that's how, I think one of the reasons why Round Square is so successful is because of that, is because we put it all out there, what we're doing, where we're going, and what we're going to do.
Why or why not are you staying in Calgary?
We actually aren't. We have 2 new, larger pieces of land that we've purchased in Winnipeg.
Oh, I saw that too. So you're moving on to Winnipeg, right? Yeah.
Yes, yeah. We're moving to Winnipeg. Thank you. And that is to date going to be our largest project. It's going to be the first project, which is on waterfront in Alexander. It's going to be 170 rental units with about 20,000 square feet of commercial. And again, same thing. It's the same reasons we're going to Winnipeg. We feel Winnipeg is a growing market. They're well diversified as well. So they have agriculture, government, and they have a pretty cool tech industry. And it's fairly a young city. It reminds me a little bit of Calgary about 20 years ago. Their population right now is 750,000 and they're planning to go to 1 million in 20 years. And where we are in Winnipeg is right on waterfront, kind of like Eau Claire in Calgary. Right. It would be similar area. So we're super excited to get into Winnipeg. We have the support of the Center Venture, which is the development arm for the city of Winnipeg. And we were able to be successful on another piece of land with an RFP. So we're super excited about Winnipeg. One of the reasons we want to move to Winnipeg is to expand Round Square. Our vision is to be one day across Canada and owning our own assets and to make a difference in these communities, in established communities. And we've been successful here in Calgary, and we think we have the blueprint now to be able to go into other cities and do something. And Winnipeg was a great market to test because our main architect, 546 Architecture, is out of Winnipeg.
No, that's exciting. And so you're moving to, or you're opening in Winnipeg, and you'll obviously continue to be in Calgary as well. Yeah. Yeah,
100%. Calgary will always be home base. We have some larger projects as well in Calgary, which we've dropped little snippets of. Haven't really put it on our website, but we probably have, I think in the next 7 to 10 years, probably 700 units going to come to market. So we're just we have enough in Calgary now that we're excited about.
Afshin, final question. What advice would you give your younger self for our audience, or a younger person possibly listening?
One of the things I've lived by is it's interesting where a lot of people love to measure a person's success by their successes. One of the things I've done, and I will always do, is what challenges did you face while growing up, and how did you deal with it? In my business, I deal with challenges every hour, it seems like. And that's what makes us, and that's what makes us successful, is to be able to get through those challenges. So I think when I try to measure a person's success, it's really on, hey, what troubles or challenges or roadblocks did you have in your past or in your today, and how did you get through that? Because sometimes it's easy to be successful when everything else is running 100%. Everybody can be successful. It's really a true measure of someone's success is the challenges that they face and how they were to overcome or get through those challenges. And then the second one would be, is the only way to grow in life or business is to take risks. And we do that every day. I never, again, like I touched on earlier in our conversation, is I never thought I would be into real estate this deep. And we have, now I'm looking at a 12-story concrete building, which I thought I would never do. And I was scared. It was scary. It was like, oh my God, what am I getting myself into? However, it was the only way to grow. It was the only way to grow. And then my support comes from my team and my family and my brothers and so on and so forth.
Well, it's great. It's been really wonderful interviewing you today. I love the risk that you've taken, and I love watching Round Square and how as a team and company you've developed, and look forward to the future and much more success for you, watching it along the way.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. And we haven't talked much about you, but I've been watching you too since 2007, I guess, and it's been interesting to see your journey as well.
Yeah, so thanks so much, and thank you for your support along the way as well. Well, awesome. I guess that wraps it up, Afshin. Thanks so much, and we'll talk again soon.
Okay, thanks, Brian.
Well, that wraps up today's podcast with the terrific Afshin Devaney of Round Square. I hope you enjoyed listening to this podcast. Thank you for taking the time. Now, if you have questions, suggestions on who should be on my podcast, we're interviewing again Calgary's high performers as it relates to lifestyle and Calgary living. Thanks so much for your suggestions or questions. You can reach me through Insta at Calgary_living, or my email is Brian, Bryon, @thehowardteam.net.